All right, let's see if it pulls up. We're going to want to make sure that everything is properly being recorded. And it looks like, yeah, everything's looking good. I gotta say, this software is rather impressive considering it's all free. Man, really lucking out on the free software side of things. Uh, so yeah, that looks good. That looks good. Everything is up and running. Let's pull that back up real quick. Let's see here. And so today, sorry, a little bit all over the place. Today, we are going to be talking about Packet Tracer. Um, so let's just make sure we got everything up over here and over here. And here we go. So, Packet Tracer. Packet Tracer is actually put out by Cisco themselves. They built this simulation software and they put it out for free, and you can get it, and you actually get a little 10-hour course that comes with it. Um, so it's like its own built-in little tutorial. Again, everything's free, and it is a tool that's able to simulate all kinds of different networks, not just home networks, but like citywide, wide area networks connected to the backbone of the like. You can just really play around with the software. It's pretty great, um, and it's completely free. I'll have this link in the video when I upload it to YouTube. It's Netacad, Net Academy, I believe is what that's short for. So you come here, you download Packet Tracer, you sign up for a free course. Um, you don't have to take the course or anything, but it's definitely worthwhile. It's going to give you those ins and outs of the software. So let's just really quickly, why why am I so excited about this software? Well, because the systems, Cisco routers, switches, um, security firewalls. They have all-in-one systems for your like voice over internet and stuff. All of these systems, they're expensive. Like like for someone who's just at home trying to get these certificates, if you had to buy these systems um, to work on them, it wouldn't be feasible. For instance, we could just pull up some websites that offer Cisco products, and you can see the price points on this stuff are rather intense, right? Like we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars for some of these things, tens of $1,000s for some of these things, easily 1,000 for a router that you'd be working on or a switch that you'd be working on. So, for instance, a lot of times we're working on the Cisco 2901. You can actually simulate that in the software. But if you wanted to buy it yourself to work on it, I mean, clearly there's some fluctuation with the price. You could probably get a cheaper model used off eBay, but still, you're looking at a substantial upfront investment, right? Whereas Cisco, they clearly did this to help themselves out as well, because now you can pull from a much larger community of people who are able to get these certificates, right? They're able to grow the amount of engineers who can work on Cisco devices. And I think that's a benefit for them. Um, and it's certainly a benefit for people like me who don't already have a job in the industry. Excuse me, don't already have a job in the industry, but are definitely looking to get in on the networking side, have a bunch of stuff already um, kind of worked out, but no hands-on experience. This gives you that ability to really play around, tinker with the systems, so it's not all foreign to you. If you do end up landing that entry-level position, you can be like, man, I know what's going on here. So let's pull up Packet Tracer. This is what Packet Tracer looks like. Doesn't look like there's much to it, but if we look down here, we got network devices. So within network devices, we have routers, switches, we got hubs. No one really uses hubs anymore, but we got them because it's a choice that you can use. We got wireless devices. Look at all these wireless devices. We got home routers, so you can set up a home. We got cell towers, so you can see what it's like working with a cell tower. I don't know. This is pretty cool stuff, right? And it's all working. Like it's all. So we'll get into that a little bit here in a second. But components, look, we got home, we got smart city, we got industrial, we got look at this. We got power grid. You can make your own power grid, okay? And network it all together. How cool is that? I mean, this is almost at the level of a game. The ability to play around and create is really fantastic. So again, this is saving us a lot of money. This is pretty cool. It's completely free. It also comes with a bunch of so if you're not already in a course like Udemy that I'm using that has labs, um, Neil Anderson provides us with labs that we can use, that we can learn off of. I don't want to pull those up on here because that's a bot product, and I don't want to just give it away for free. It's not mine. But Cisco itself includes a bunch of pre-built networks. So you're like, hey man, I've never worked on a system that has authentication. I don't know what it looks like. Oh, look at this. There's a pre-built system with an authentication server, and it even goes through how to test. How to test radius. So you can work with these specific systems, and you can figure out how they interact with one another. You can get comfortable with accessing them. Really cool stuff. Really, really cool stuff. This is all a bit above my ability so far, but I tell you what, we can play with some routers really quick and just test some of the commands I've been learning throughout the day. So again, this is day 3 of my CCNA certification adventure, and today I focus mainly on packet tracer labs. So if we just pull up a router, just really quickly also to show you how much they put into this. So we can pull up these routers, and you're like, yeah, but they all look the same. Like, what does this mean to me? This isn't really going to help me. But check out this back panel. You're like, oh, do all the router back panels look like that? Do they just use some generic image? No. These are all the panels of this specific router. So this is what a 1941 looks like on the back. You can look at all the modules individually and get a little synopsis of what they are. You get a little up close picture of what they would look like. I mean, how cool is this, right? So you can, it's just the amount of work they did on this. You can even power them on and off right here. So if you want to do a hard reboot, you can do that in this simulation. You can simulate a hard reboot. I just think that's so cool. So they put it in each one of these, so you get an idea of what you're working with. You can actually look at these systems. You can see how they're set up. You can say, oh, here's the console port. You know how you're going to be getting. So you could say, you could just by looking at the back of this ISR 4331, the console port is this little guy right here. It's not even done by RJ45 anymore. So I can tell you, just based on looking at this back panel, that this is a much newer router than some of the other ones, because a lot of them. Oh man, I don't know how much I want to say here because I haven't worked in the industry that much, but it seems like a significant portion of routers still work off a RJ45 console cable with a DB9 connector on one side and an RJ45 on the other. And that's been updated to a USB in RJ45. Let's see if we can pull up. Yeah, Cisco console cable. All right, so check it out. This is what an original would look like with the DB9 on one side. That's a 9-pin connector that goes to an RJ45. Here's a little bit newer one that's a USB that goes straight to an RJ45. And then there should be one that goes... Yeah, here we go. Here's the Mini B. So this would work on... Oops. The Mini B, this little guy, USB to mini B would work on this router right here. It would go right in there. That's where that little connection would go, and then you would do your direct connection to the router. Batman emoji, love it. So why do we need to know this stuff? Like, what's the deal with knowing where the console cable goes? Why is that important? Well, console, that's how you initially set up your device. So when you get your device for the first time, you unbox it, and it boots up initially. It doesn't have an IP assigned to it. It doesn't have any of the network built out on it yet. So you need to do an initial setup on the device. So how we do that is we come in and we plug in to the console port. Let's see. Oh, so this one is again, and oh look, so this one you have a choice. You can either do the Mini B right here, or you can do an RJ45 right here. So we would come in, we would have a new system, we would plug in there, and this is the iOS command line interface. So this is simulating us being on our laptop, and we're next to the server, we're plugged in, and this is the screen we would get on PuTTY. So PuTTY is a software that integrates between your laptop and these systems. And even though we're using like a Mini B or an RJ45 connection, it's not talking on an IP level. It's talking on a very, very base level. So it doesn't have any of that in it yet. So we would connect directly to it with our console cable, and then we would be able to do anything we needed to do. We'd do our initial setup. A lot of times we'd already have a startup configure saved, maybe do a flash drive or something, and we would just load it straight in and we'd be good to go. But for right now, we're just gonna play around and show some of the commands I learned today. Again, this is just day 3, so very basic stuff so far. But let's go ahead and jump into it. So let's see. We already showed the back panels, showed how they're all unique to the device. All right, so first command we're gonna do is we're gonna do enable. And you can see after router, which is the name of this router, not very imaginative, but this is boxed right out of the box. So if we enable, we are now at a different user level. So if we imagine when we first log in, we're kind of like a pleb. We don't have very many privileges. In fact, let's go back to this level, and what we could do is we could just put a question mark and it will show us what we have access to. So these are some of the commands we can do at initial level when we first get into the system. I'm wondering if you can hear my dog go crazy. And so this is what we could do when we first get into the system. Not a lot is going on here. It looks like we could do some pings. We can immediately exit or log out. That doesn't seem very helpful as we just got in. Disconnect, same thing. But what we're going to want to do is what I just showed you is enable. And so when we use that question mark, there's debates on whether or not this is accessible. These help menus are accessible during the certification process. So don't rely on your ability to pull up these context menus, but do use them when you're practicing. Like you just want to immerse yourself in this. You want to get used to it. You want to be able to play around with it to the point that you're comfortable and know kind of like, because you're going to make mistakes, you're going to make errors. You want to be able to tell what kind of error you're making and what it means. So let's see. We're going to enable. And as you can see, it says right here, when you enable, you turn on privileged commands. So do that, and you can see the little marker next to the router changes. So now we're a £. That means we're in privileged executive mode. So we're higher up on the food chain now. We have more. In fact, here we go. let's show exactly how many more commands we have. We're going to do a question mark and check it out. So this was what we had access to. Looks like maybe 10, 15 things. Here we go. Now that we're in privileged executive mode, privileged executive mode, we have access to all this, like maybe four times more the commands, and each one of these commands has subcommands. So clearly, we have access to a lot more of the system when we enable ourselves, when we get to this level. And again, if we want to go back down, disable. So if enable takes us up, disable is going to take us down. And enable is up, we're privileged. Very, very hoity-toity. And then we disable, and we're back to play. In fact, you know what's hilarious? This symbol right here, check, look at this. Look at this. Man, I tell you what. It's the less than sign, right? No. It's the more than. Okay. I was gonna say, but sometimes you wonder, how people in IT communities get kind of pigeonholed or shoehorned into being kind of they can kind of hold their knowledge over people, and I think part of that is because of the way we name things in this path. So when you call something privileged executive mode, I feel like that kind of enforces this feeling of oh, I'm privileged. Yes, I'm executive. I have access to all these extra stuff that these other people don't have access to. I mean, in my mind, it would have been so much easier just to call it like level 1, level 2, level 3, right? People would have known exactly what you're talking about, how far into the system where you were. But no, someone was like, I'm gonna make a higher level to the system. I'm gonna call it something else. I'm gonna call it privileged executive mode. I mean, more power to you. But I think that's so funny. And it helps when you remember it, right? Because you have a good laugh about it, and you remember it a little bit better. So we can see already that the privilege mode has a lot more commands. You have access to a lot of stuff that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. Um, and again, it gives you these little blurbs of exactly what, well, not exactly, I mean, it can't tell you everything, but it gives you a really good idea of what these commands do. So even if you only set up these systems, once in a while, it's not your day-to-day job, you're not working in a data center or something, you still have so much information accessible to you that helps you out. And of course, if you're working in technology, you want to have a real strong Google foo. So being able to Google these terms and understand them is super important as well. I'm surprised. I'm still so surprised that these systems all come with Telnet. For those that don't know, I only know this because of my prior certificates. SSH is going to be your secure connection if you're telecommuting into this device. Telnet would be in the clear. There's no encryption at all. So a lot of times when you enable, you actually have to enter in a password, login and password, because you don't want everyone to have access to these commands. After all, not everyone can be a privileged executive, right? It takes something to do that. But if you enter that information over Telnet, and anyone is sniffing packets out of the air, intercepting packets out of the air, they'll be able to uncover your login and password. So super, super not safe. So if you are going to come in over the network, you're going to want to use an SSH. You're going to want to encrypt your files. I mean, just in general, you want to, as often as you can, you want to use encryption. Even when I'm on the web, I would rather use a HTTPS than just an HTTP, and that's the difference between a broadcasting in the clear and broadcasting encrypted, you know? So just something to keep in mind. Way off track, a little bit of a tangent there. So pretty cool that it gives us all this information. That we can go higher though. We can go even higher. So we're in we're in privileged exec, but we still haven't configured any kind of IP address. The system is still not accessible outside of directly connecting, going through the command line interface via the console port. So we're going to keep moving on. The next command we're going to use is configure terminal. Oops, maybe that's not the next command we're going to use. Configure. I'll tell you what, we can use a question mark. Yeah, it looks like, did I spell it wrong? Oh, it's doing the, okay, so that time it brought me up. I'm unsure of why it didn't bring me up the first time. Oh, because I didn't spell it right. And the second time when I used the up arrow, it already had the configure there. So I've been using some shortcuts and I wasn't talking about them as bad. So you can use the up and down arrow to use your last command. The reason it's not pulling anything up right now is because I actually jumped into a new bracket. So I went from privileged executive up into the configure. So that, yeah, I'm loving the emotes. So the jump to a higher level means I no longer have access to that previous command. So up and down arrow isn't going to shift into previous commands. But now we are at the configure level. So what can we do here? Again, we're just going to hit a question mark and check it out. Now we have access to all these things that we didn't have access to prior. So I can already see that AAA, things like that, access list, banner, we didn't have access to that as a privileged executive. But now that we're in the configure terminal, we have access to all these additional commands. And again, this is just another level up. So we're moving, you can either think of it as moving deeper into the system or moving higher on the privilege chain. We're getting more and more commands, access to more and more commands. And man, there's a lot here. There's so much here. So check it out. Enable password perimeters. You can do all kinds of stuff here. End, exit. So you can, that's how you get out. That's how you can change the clock. You can do all kinds of stuff. It's pretty cool. Oh, check it out. Host name. Set system network name. So if we didn't want to be router anymore, we could be I'm not spelling anything right today. I'm so sorry. Host name, weird canyon. All right, see. Okay, so check it out. The router name went from router to weird canyon. So we were able to update the name of this router, and we had to get all the way up to the config. If we tried to so if we went enable and we were just at the privileged executive level, oops, I didn't need to enable. We were already there. It's all right. I'm going to learn this stuff. So we're already at the privileged executive. If I tried to do a host name change from here, it's not going to work, right? Unrecognized command, because we can't, oh, house, I did it again. So it's still an unrecognized command, even when you spell it right, because I'm at the wrong level, right? But if we go configure terminal, so now we're up at this level, and oh, check it out, I spelled it right that time. Now we can go back to router. So you have to be at the right level to make the right command work. If you're not, it's just not going to do it. It's going to say unrecognized command because you're not at the right level, right? So knowing what the syntax error is and what that means, because it's not that I didn't have the right command, it was that I was at the wrong level. So again, getting to your level and just hitting the question mark and seeing all the available commands can be super helpful. That way you know if you don't see the command you want to run in that list, chances are you can't run it at that level. There is an exception to this. So there is the ability, if you type do, you can run, I believe, and again, day 3, so I don't know everything yet, but I think what happens with the do command is you can run any command at a lower bracket. So, for instance, when I did a question mark, okay, so in the configure, there is no show command, right? We can look down in the S's, there is no show. But when we go up to the privileged executive level, there is a show command, and it shows running system information. So if I'm one level too high, I shouldn't be able to do a show command. I can't do just a show. What's a good show command? Show IP interface brief, right? So it's giving me that marker because it's like you can't do show from this level, right? But if you can't execute a show command from this level. I should be careful about how I phrase that. But if I put a do in front of it, whoa, I just executed the show command at a higher level, even though I'm not supposed to have access to it because I put the do in front of it, right? So this means I can make changes on the configuration level, and then I can show those changes without having to exit out and then authenticate myself back in, because there might be like passwords in the way and stuff. So you don't want to constantly be logging down to a lower level just to show something that you just did, just to make sure that it took effect in the way that you want it to. Because again, show gives you the ability to show running system information. So that's really important. That can give you access to a lot of information. So yeah, so we can see, since I did a do show IP interface brief, that we have yet to change anything. Like it's still no IP address has been added to the system, so we would still need to access it via the ISO command line interface, but we can change that. So we need to go even deeper into the system. What we can do is we can select one of these individual man, words are failing me. One of these individual access points. Network cards, network access points. Oof, I gotta get better at this. So what I just did is I went from configure terminal, which is where we were, and I went into an individual network card. So I went interface gigabyte Ethernet 00. So I found that from doing the do show IP interface. That's how I found the actual interface. So this would list all the ones on that router. So if we pulled up a different router, we did the same show IP brief based on what was loaded into the physical card. It would show those interfaces. So right now it's showing this SPF is right. I guess that's the VLAN. VLAN L. And then the two, that's switching ports, high-speed WAN, internet, small form, SPF populated. Okay, here's the gigabyte right here. Here's the gigabyte port. Doesn't look right to me, but this could just be me. Again, playing around with systems and stuff. This is what you need to do, though. You need to poke at the systems, figure it out, right? So we're at the configure interface. We are changing this individual Ethernet port, and we're just going to add an IP address. So, you don't just type it in. You have to say, or actually, let's do question mark just to see what we can do, right? So it looks like we can set bandwidth. Wow, we can crypto, encrypt, decrypt commands. Look at all this stuff we can do. We can hold up the queues, IP, IP6, MAC addresses. Man, we can do so much as a network administrator. But what we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to change the IP, because that's what we were doing here from the beginning, right? We wanted to make sure that we could access this router via the network, so we didn't have to come into the command line interface every time we wanted to make a change. So I'm gonna do IP, and then I'm gonna do a question mark. My command's right here. This is what I just did. This is what came up. So with the IP command, you can still do all of this. And we want to do address. So if we do IP address, it sets the IP address of the interface. So we're in the gigabyte 00 interface. We're going to do IP address 198. This is going to be a class C because it starts with 198. So we're in that class C bracket. And I'm just making this up. And then we're going to give it a subnet mask because it's class C. This is going to be a /24 mask. You can see 255.255.255.0. So that's the first 3 octets all set to 255. So they're all ones in those first 3 octets. That's a /24 mask. So with this, we're going to hit enter. It doesn't give us any kind of confirmation. It just does the line again. And it's like, well, did anything happen? Well, we can't do a show command here, but we can do a do show, maybe. Can we do a do show from this level? Let's see. We did it from the level below. What is the... Oh, man. I'm blanking. It's do show... If you don't... It's just right here. Why am I blanking on this? Do show, it's not interface, is it? No, it's IP. Do show IP interface brief. Check it out. The IP address changed. It's yes, it's manual. So this method is manual. It's not like updated some other way because we changed it, right? There's another way we can look at this. We can do show interface gigabyte Ethernet 0, 0. So this is a lot more information, but we can see right here the internet addresses, and then this includes the mask. So the information above, the brief information, did not include the mask. It just gave us very briefly the IP address right here, right? But if we, instead of doing a brief IP interface, if we look at the exact interface, the exact network card interface, we get a lot more information. Well, for one, we didn't type brief. But so we can see here, it's going to give you not only the IP address, but the subnet mask. Now, I typed the subnet mask in dotted decimal form, but it's giving me in CIDR notation, right? So again, CIDR notation is that slash notation. Dotted decimal is the 4 numbers separated by 3 periods, right? So it's a decimal, a dot, decimal, dot, or period. Either way, that's fine. So this is just, again, this is just another way of showing the same information. I feel like I come across that so often, but that's just how this works, right? There's always a lot of different ways to come at a situation. So we have updated the system. It has an IP address now. We should be, I mean, clearly it's not actually connected to anything, but in this little example of ours, we'll imagine that it's good to go. So what if we just did like, can we do a reboot from this level? No, we can't. So let's go exit. So now we're at the configure level. Let's go exit. Now we're at the privilege level. Let's see, can we do a reboot from the privilege level? Ooh. No, I don't know what that is all about. But you know what we can do? So this, look at this. I made a mistake. I don't know how to fix this. I'm just gonna go to the physical layer of this router. I'm just gonna turn it off, turn it back on. Uh-oh. That was a hard restart of the router. Check it out. So that's what this is. This is the system restarting. I just gave it a hard reboot. So here's the thing. This is actually, I wanted to kind of do this. Maybe I wanted to actually do the reboot command, hard reboot. But either way, so check it out. Uh-oh, none of the information changed. We changed the name, but it still says router. Hopefully, let's see if the IP changed too, because the name didn't keep. So maybe show. Man, I keep losing this command. This one command. Do show IP interface. Brief. Uh-oh. We lost the IP address too. None of the information that we did saved. And that's because we did not save the configuration. So whatever you change on the router at that moment is going to change how the router is running at that moment. So the configuration will change at that moment, and everything, like all the information running through the router will go with those changes. However, if you do not save those changes to the startup configuration, then at any point, if the router gets reset from like a power outage, or if you hard reset it like I just did, or for whatever reason the router restarts, it's gonna run the old startup configuration, and that's because the current running configuration, until you save it, is being run off volatile memory. Right, so hopefully you guys have a little bit on this. Is going back to like A plus non-volatile slash compared to volatile. Volatile RAM means once it loses power, volatile memory, once it loses power, it loses all the information on it. It's volatile. Yeah, I don't know how else to explain that. Non-volatile RAM, even when the power goes out, it saves that little bit of information and it boots it up. So actually, the startup config is saved on non-volatile RAM, and we can update it. So first, let's make some changes. So we can just go. Let's just go back through the steps. So right now we're at the peon mode. We don't have a lot of privileges. We're gonna enable. We're the executive privilege mode now. We're gonna configure a terminal. We're at the configuration mode now, and now we're gonna want to do the next interface question mark. All right, here we go. So interface gigabit Ethernet, and then we need to select the right one. Okay, we're there. Now we need to do IP address, and we're gonna change it again. We're just making this up. 255.255.255.0. We're gonna do a do show just to make sure the changes happened. IP interface brief. Yep, changes were, oops, we did it to the 01 instead of the 00. That's okay, changes were made. You know what, I also wouldn't mind, is this the level? Yeah, this is the level, okay. I also wouldn't mind changing the host name again, because I feel like that's a, I did again, house name. Why do I want to change the house name so bad? So the host name is changed. I feel like changing the host name is a great way to do it because it instantly populates on your screen. So unlike the IP that you have to do a do show when you change your router name, it instantly boom boom. So we've made these changes, but this time, if for whatever reason there's a power outage, we want to make sure that the information is saved. So we're going to do a question mark again, and we're looking for run. It doesn't look like run is on this level. Let's exit down one level. Let's do a question mark, reload, resume. What level does run have to be? I would think it'd be, let's see what happens when we try to do it. Copy. Oh, it's not run, it's copy. That's my bad. I was looking for the, okay, here we copy from one file to another. All right, so we're at the privileged executive mode. We did our question mark to find the command because I couldn't find it. Found it, and it gave us a little understanding of what you do. So now we're gonna wanna copy. So we are on the running configuration right now, right? Because this is the one that's running. It's the one that we've made changes to. So we want to copy that one to the startup config. Copy. Running, update, merge with current system configuration. Do we want to do running config? What does the command? Copy. Copy run? What do we got here? Oh, here we go. Okay, sweet. It's a copy run. So I forgot the run part of that command in my notes. It's not just copy and startup, it's copy run startup config. And this is going to copy the running config onto the startup config. So right now we can either hit enter, and that's going to just use the default name, or we could type in a name and it would change it. But if we just hit enter, it should just run right over what we had already set up. So let's see. So yeah, see, when we do a show startup config, check it out. The host name is now Weird Canyon. Ooh. All right, let's see. Can we do a reboot from here? Where are the reboots done from? Connect, disable, disconnect. Turn on privileged. Exit level automatically reset functions. We're going to be using debug a lot as network, working in a networking field. Debug's going to be really popular. Show command's going to be really popular. We're going to want to get comfortable with those. Anytime you've spent in a command shell, anything like that, you're going to be very familiar with this stuff. It's very similar, but you're still going to want to get comfortable with it. And I was looking for a reload. Hey, yeah, here. Halts and performs a cold restart. So everything should populate up again. We should have the same Weird Canyon name. We should be able to do IP address. All right, we got the Weird Canyon name. Show commands from this. Yeah, show. IP interface brief. Look at that, it's saved. So our running configuration was saved. And check it out, the method right here, NVRAM, that stands for non-volatile RAM. So there you go. We're talking about talking about that earlier, and now we're seeing it. So being able to decode these acronyms is always very helpful too. Just being able to be like, I know what that means. I know what that means. um, so that's pretty cool. So we learned how to move up in the privilege structure from your just initial connection, enable into the privilege executive command structure. And then we went higher by configuring terminal, and that's where you get to configure the various terminals on your route. So all these terminals back here that you can click through on it. That's what we're configuring in the terminal. And what we did is then we went specifically into the interface for one of these interesting um, uh, Ethernet ports. Sorry. So then we further into the Ethernet port. When you're in the Ethernet port, then you're able to configure that specific one as opposed to being in the terminal where you're configuring like system-wide stuff. Um, we figured out how to use the question mark to see available commands. And again, that may not be available on the test, just kind of depending on how the lab is set up. People who take the test aren't allowed to discuss what the problems they come across, but they are able to kind of generally discuss things. And a lot of people have said some labs gave them access to help context and some did not. So um, study like you don't have access to it. But when you're poking around in the systems, when you're playing with them, at the same time you should play with those help menus because that's something we're going to be using in the field, right? Being able to manipulate that information, use Google and things like that is only going to grow your knowledge base, is only going to make you more comfortable with these systems. And that is a net positive because if you're going into an interview, or not even just the test, but if you're going into an interview knowing these systems on an entry level job, I feel like that's only going to benefit you, right? Like maybe that doesn't necessarily they're going to put you in a position where you're actually doing this stuff right off the bat, but they're going to be that much more impressed with your knowledge set. And also it's going to help. I mean, again, we wouldn't be able to take these certificates without this software. I mean, unless you worked for a corporation that had access to these systems and let you play around with them in your free time. Because again, like, you saw me do that hard reset when I made a mistake. If this was a corporation's router, I would either have to be playing with it on downtime when no one was on the network and no like automation was happening on the network because I would have just taken down a section of it because I was playing around, right? So this simulation software is just so amazing, and there's like, oh man, it's just so next level. um, Everything that they included in it, um, and it's just, here's all your lines. You have different connections. You can use fiber, multi-mode, single mode, coaxial, all your different copper options with Ethernet. I mean, this is a significant. Look at MCU boards. That's what I was talking about earlier. Some of these things allow for like, I'm pretty sure the MCU board is the system they use to um, manipulate all the over IP functions, like the voice over IP, all the telecommunications. That includes like Zoom calls, but I can't think of what it is for Cisco. They have their own settings, but they have these systems as well that like an overarching system that allows you to control it all from one point, which is always nice. And there's a couple of different versions of those depending on what we're working with. I'm talking specifically about their VoIP uh, products when I talk about the EMU or the EDU. But again, just scratching the surface. This is day 3, so quite a long ways to go. still learning a lot, packing it in there, right? And on top of all this new information, you want to cycle through the old information. So make sure that you're still looking at, um, make sure you're still looking at your stuff from yesterday. So we were talking about how binary works, how octets work, how these how being able to manipulate IPs helps you understand subnets, and being able to manipulate subnets is a big part of this networking, uh, working in networking, being able to work with subnets. So, routers, they work on layer three, which means they're working with IPs. We got switches. They work on layer two, which means they're working with MAC addresses. That's how they're uh, funneling information. Um, and then we have hubs, which also work on MAC address, only they work on half duplex instead of full duplex. So the reason no one uses hubs anymore is because they're not great for overall bandwidth, because they flood the network. So if something gets sent into a hub, it just floods it out on all its channels. If something's being sent, it can't be received. That's what half duplex means. Whereas a switch, it's only gonna flood the interface port that is necessary based on its ARP catch. Um, and it works in full duplex, so it can send, it can receive, it can send, it can receive, which is just, you're doubling your throughput right there. If you can send and receive versus just send or just receive. So no one really uses hubs anymore, but they're an option because you never know what you're going to run into when you're out there on the job, right? Like, legacy systems are real, and people don't want to upgrade if things work until they're forced to upgrade. And we talked about some of the reasons people are going to be forced to upgrade in the near future. For one, IP version 6, that's going to cause issue with some legacy systems, and people are going to need to upgrade. The Internet of Things is bigger than ever. Networks are everywhere. So being able to use software like Packet Tracer, being able to use resources like Udemy, being able to add these certificates to your resume, I really feel like is a huge benefit when you're going into the job market, especially clearly, if you have like a CS degree, then you don't need this stuff when you're going into the job market. You're going off your CS degree, um, and they expect you to have like a basic understanding of this stuff. Whereas if you come in without a CS degree, but with these certificates, maybe that hurts in your overall knowledge pool. But having these certificates, you see on day three, we're already. This is scratching the surface, but we're already getting into these, like, we're digging around in these systems, and I just don't feel like those degree patterns, sorry, those degree pathways really get you this involved, this nitty gritty in the systems. So this was day three. It's looking good. I'm excited. We got a month yet left, and it's only gonna get better from here. These streams that I hold are only going to be more and more filled with information. I'm only going to be better at explaining how these systems interconnect, and that's where we want to be. And I really hope people join me for this adventure. I hope it helps them also kind of have a little bit of structure to their day. Maybe they want to have something done by by the time the stream starts or something like that. And if not, that's fine. I really hope that also, like, a recruiter or something, anyone interested in my resume pops by and sees that I really did go through the effort to learn this stuff, um, that I'm willing to put my nose to the grindstone and learn this stuff. Because I'm sure for anyone who's doing it, they know these certificates are not necessarily fun. Um, when you try to encapsulate all this information, when you try to uh, learn all this really deeply technical information with this kind of fanciful, made up jargon on top of it, it's just, it can become so much. But, just take a deep breath. You're not gonna meet every one of your, um, milestones. You may not do the best one day, but just, you know, one step at a time. I can't. Motivation is so tricky when it comes to this stuff. I'm really happy that I started these streams to just kind of punctuate the end of my day, um, and have something to not only look forward to, but to make sure that I'm working towards. Um, yeah. So I hope you probably didn't learn anything from this, but I hope people enjoy this, and if anyone does stop by, I hope this helps you helps you learn something and makes your day a little bit better. So again, today we just scratched the surface of Packet Tracer, completely free software provided by Cisco. Feel free to get in there, give it a try. Again, it is completely free, and it has self-paced practice that it walks you through the whole thing. So pretty neat, pretty neat. Um, I will see you tomorrow, same time, 4 p.m., going over day 4. See you then. Take it easy, everyone.